they were the ones that that really stood by me, and they're still my friends today. The guy that was riding with me, ironically enough, a few years later, he ended up being killed in a motorcycle crash where alcohol was related. But, I'm just thankful that it didn't happen when it was me. Because if somebody had to get hurt and I had to be responsible, I can live with that, right? In the back, way back there, yes. The question was basically, what was the first thing that my family said to me after the accident? Or, put another way, I guess, mainly how did my parents react would be the question. And, if I have any regrets at all for what I've been through, it's really for what I put my family through. Because you see, when something like this happens, it doesn't just happen to you. It happens to everybody you love and everybody you care about. And everybody in my family was affected in some way, especially my mom and dad. They've been living in the same house for like 25 years, I go out here and I break my neck. I spent a year in the hospital. I come home, and when I got home, I couldn't get in because there was too many steps. Once they carried me inside, the hallways were too narrow. So my parents had to go out and build a new home just to meet my needs, I regret putting them through that. But to this day, I can say they never once threw it back in my face. They never said, I told you so, or you're stupid, or anything like that. They've always just tried to help me rebuild my life, back to what it is today. So I'm real thankful for that. But like I said, when something like this happens, it affects everybody around you and changes people's lives. Okay? Good. Who else? The question there was, did my girlfriend, after all that time, stay with me? And, that just didn't work out. I was young, and she was young. We had it all figured out before the accident. We were going to graduate and get married and have 10 kids and all this. But the accident kind of changed those plans a little bit. I'll tell you a little story, though, put it in perspective for you. The day after the crash, the following morning after the crash, one of my best friends came to see me in the hospital, who I'd known all my life. And he came into the intensive care unit where I was at, and we were talking back and forth, and I was expressing to him my concerns about this particular young lady. And he said, don't worry about her, because I'll take care of her. And, well, he did. They're married today and have a couple of kids. So anyhow, but hey, after that happened, I got over it, right? I got over it, and I went out and I started meeting new people. And finally, I met a lady that I fell in love with, and I was able to get married, and so life moved on, And so sometimes, and it ended up being a great thing for me, because after I got married, my wife and I started traveling all across the country, speaking to groups like I'm doing with you today. And during that time, traveling, I started to learn a lot about the country, the world, about myself. And one thing that I learned about myself was that I cheated myself out of something, and that was an education. I talked to you in the beginning And I was talking to you really from the perspective of being where you're at now, sitting where you're at, being a student. You know, and I was invincible. Nothing could ever happen to me, you know, but it was the cars, the girls, the athletics. Those were my things. You know, you didn't hear me say anything about academics because schoolwork wasn't for me. As a result of that, after I had the accident, I spent a year in the hospital, and I went back to school, and I was able to graduate, but I didn't have much to show for it. In fact, I graduated what I like to call functionally illiterate, meaning that I could not read well enough to comprehend full paragraphs, and I couldn't really write incomplete sentences. So I cheated myself out of something. So as I traveled, I saw that. And I wanted to change it. I wanted to be able to go back to school. But traveling, of course, I couldn't do that until two things happened to really turn my life around. One of those things was the worst thing that I think could possibly ever happen. I can only think of one other situation that would be worse. And the other thing was the greatest thing that I think could ever happen. And the first thing happened on a warm September afternoon. I had been traveling across the country, and I came home, and I was spending some time with my dad, who was my best friend in the world. And we were talking about the things that had happened while I had been traveling. And he got to where he didn't feel good. And he started having chest pains. And one thing led to another. And before you knew it, he suffered a massive heart attack. And he died while he was holding my hand. And that was about the worst thing that I've ever been through in my life, because I was just lost. I didn't know which way to turn or where to go, you know, and I was left with a choice again, just like when I was the first tragedy, just like when I was disabled. I could sit in the corner and let life pass me by, or I could get back out there and make the best out of it. And so I was lost and trying to figure out what to do until 4 months after my dad passed away. We got the incredible news that my wife was pregnant, that she was expecting. And so, as they do in today's time, we had an ultrasound done. And they did the ultrasound, and they said, yes. They said, here's the baby, right here. And they moved the ultrasound tools around a little bit. And they said, wait a minute. They said, this looks like another one. It looks like two. And they said, well, we can't be sure. They said, we'll have to do another ultrasound in 2 weeks. You come back and it should be conclusive. So the next 2 weeks went by real slowly. Then we went back and they did another ultrasound. And they said, yeah. They said, sure enough, they said, here's the first one, here's baby A. And they said, and here's the other one, baby B. And they said, but wait a minute. They said, it looks like it could be 3. And sure enough, it was. So, yeah, thank you. So, So 11 months after my dad died, my wife gave birth to triplets, 2 little boys and a little girl. And they are, on the bottom left, my son Don, who was named after my father. Standing up behind Don is Anthony, who's named after me, and then my daughter, Amanda. And I know you guys, a lot of you guys know my kids. and you're friends with them because you went to elementary school with them. Their mom and I are divorced now, and so they are living in another county. But anyway, what I want to say to you now, and I want to shift gears a little bit, because in the beginning I was talking to you from your perspective, from sitting where you're at, from being a student. And I know what that's like, because you really do. You feel like nothing's going to happen to me. I got this under control. But all too often it does happen. And so now I want to shift gears, and I want to talk to you from a different perspective. I want to talk to you as a parent. Because guys, I can tell you right now, there's no way that you can possibly know how much your parents love you. And they love you so much, that's why they real often got to say no. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. Because they're scared something's going to happen to you. That's why my parents had to say no to me that night. No, you can't take the car. They weren't trying to interfere with what I wanted to do. They just had valuable life experience. And they knew what could happen and what did happen. So sometimes you have to say no. When my kids were small like this, everybody kept telling me, you better love them while they're little, because time goes by fast and they grow up fast. And man, people sure were right, because time did go by fast. And now, here I am, and I'm the father of 3 high school kids. 3 kids in the same place where you're at now, taking driver's education. And so now all of a sudden, I have the same fears that all parents have for young drivers that are facing getting out there for the first time, right now, and learning how to drive. And those fears consist of, driving these back roads, these rural roads that we're on, because, it's a fact that your chances of being seriously injured or hurt on these rural roads are increased a great deal, especially when we put in poor weather conditions, with that. And another great fear I have is this new problem we have with cell phones. It's been proven that cell phone use, especially with text messaging, trying to drive down the road, is as much a danger as drunk driving. So as a parent, I'm concerned about these things, because I can tell you right now, my worst fear, and I want you to hear this, my worst nightmare is something happening to one of these 3 children. I know what it was like to sit there and watch my dad pass away, and it was almost beyond comprehension. And I can't imagine something happening to one of them. And you see, that's where your parents are at right now, And that's why sometimes it probably seems like they're always on you, or they don't want you to do this or that. But it's not because they want to interfere with your life. It's because they love you that much. They love you so much. Sometimes they have to say no. To finish up the story I was telling you about not traveling anymore, I was able, after the triplets were born, I was able to go back to school and pursue my education. And I started over at J. Sargent Reynolds Community College, and I was there for about a year and a half, taking remedial math and remedial English, and I maintained a 4.0 grade point average. And then I was able to matriculate to Randolph-Macon College in Ashland, Virginia, and I was there for 3 years. And